He specializes in U.S. South Asia relations at the Woodrow Wilson Center. I asked him about the Taliban presence in Kunduz and what can be done to keep the militants at bay.
The problem is that the Taliban is already so well entrenched in Kunduz and in the surrounding region that it's really, quite frankly, a matter of time before the Taliban launches another offensive. Maybe not one that would take over a city the size of Kunduz, almost 300,000 people, but still it is on the offensive. It's an emboldened force right now, the Taliban, and really, to be quite honest, the Afghan security forces are very much on the defensive. The morale is very low, and it's going to be very difficult for them to get back on the front foot, so to speak, and to keep the Taliban at bay.
Michael, what do you see playing out there in the coming days?
Well, it's all very fluid right now. I mean, as of this very moment, the Taliban has largely been driven out of the city of Kunduz, though I'm hearing reports that there are cases of Taliban fighters remaining holed up in private homes. And, you know, even though most of them have left the city, they're in the vicinity. They've already launched offensives in some surrounding districts. And it's a very tense situation now, particularly in light of what appears to be an accidental U.S. strike on a hospital run by Doctors Without Borders. And that, of course, is a huge propaganda victory for the Taliban, which will make it even more emboldened. So, very tense time, very volatile time. And I think we have to fear that there could be more offensives by the Taliban in this part of Afghanistan, the northern parts of the country that until very recently had not been very active areas for the Taliban.
Let's move on to Syria now and the airstrikes. Russia says these strikes are targeting ISIS and other militant groups, but of course the West says it's been an all-out assault on anti-Assad fighters. President Obama said recently that Russia's strategy was a disaster. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, I think what we're seeing playing out in Syria right now is really like a throwback to the Cold War era, where essentially Syria has become a proxy battleground for Russian and American interests in that region and in the world. Whereas Russia, who is very close with Assad, is trying to do things that will strengthen him. And Russia, of course, claims that ISIS will be weakened if you strengthen Assad. I mean, that certainly is a contested point of view, to say the least. But basically, what you have now is two powers trying to carry out their interests in a country that is extremely volatile, riven by militancy. And really, you know, it was already a powder keg, and now that you have Russia launching airstrikes, it's become even more of an explosive situation.
Michael, tell us, what is Russia actually getting out of its involvement in Syria?
I think that you have to look at Russia's broader strategic goals. I think that Russia is very intent on not being perceived as a fading or a fallen power. I think that its leadership wants Russia to be seen as a power that's still significant on the global stage. And essentially, by getting involved in a direct way in the Syria crisis, I think it's a way for Russia to say, well, look, we're still a force to be reckoned with. We can come into Syria and do something big that could make a big difference in the region and in the world. So I think that for Russia, this is really an opportunity to gain international recognition. Now, whether it's positive or negative recognition, you know, that's very unclear. But I think for Russia, this is really a matter of credibility, of influence, and an effort to be seen as something more than simply a fading power on the world stage.